Welcome back. You might remember from my year-end wrap-up video several days ago, I said my goal for 2024 was just to not get worse, but in reality, I do want to get better at chess. That's what this whole channel has been about. That's what I focused a lot of my efforts on. And right after I started the channel, I came up with the list of weak points, and I'm going to switch over, and this is the graphic that I came up with. At that time, I felt like I was really bad at evaluating a current position, and I still miss it sometimes, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better at that. I've put some effort into learning how to evaluate a current position. I'm still not very good at choosing the best moves, but that's also very vague. I was pretty weak at finding forced checkmates at that time, and that's something that I feel like I've gotten better about. Endgame Tactics, since I came up with that, I felt like I was losing a lot of games right at the end when it came down to pawn races and so forth. I did put a lot of work into that a couple of years ago, or within the last 2 years, and I've improved on that. A lot of times with opponents, even if I'm down going into an endgame, I've been able to turn those around most of the time, or at least pull out a draw. And I had a few blind spots, as we all do. Mine turned out to be bishop and queen diagonals, especially long diagonals, or sometimes the geometric shapes that a queen can move in, and I've gotten better on those too. So I decided to come up with a new list. Now, when I came up with that first list a couple of years ago, what I did was just went on my feelings, the kinds of things that, I thought back over the last several games that I had lost, and I thought, what am I doing poorly? What are the kind of things that I can work on? But this time I decided to do it a little bit more systematically. So what I did was I went through my archive on Chessdotcom. I selected only rapid games, and I looked only at the rapid games that I've lost since I switched to E4. It turns out I switched to E4 on May 1st, 2023. Now, I did go ahead and evaluate my losses for both white and black pieces, and the black pieces I've been playing the Caro-Kann against E4 the whole time. But anyway, I had to set up a beginning point. And in that time, I had 45 losses in rated rapid games on Chess.com, and I tried to find a cause for why I lost in each of those games to see what I could work on. And this is the list that I came up with. Out of those 45 losses, in 12 of those games, I was never ahead. And that makes it really hard to determine how I lost. In a lot of them, it was just a very gradual slope on the graph, a series of inaccuracies. And in 5 of those 12 games, my opponent didn't make any mistakes, blunders, whatever. And I've said many times on the channel, I'm not going to win against those opponents. So that might not be something I can work on or fix right now. There were another 12 games where I'm not sure why I lost. Even if the graph did show a break, in which, I went behind and I tried to figure out what happened at that point, and I couldn't figure it out, at least not without pouring a lot more time into it. And time isn't something that I have a whole lot of. But a few of these other things are things that I can work on. In 9 of those games, I simply hung a piece. 1 or 2 of them were to a set of complex tactics, but most of them, I put a piece where the opponent could take it, or I left a piece that the opponent was attacking and it wasn't defended. And those are beginner mistakes. I think that is something I can fix. 5 of the games I lost to Endgame Tactics, so that may be something I need to continue working on. In 4 of those games, I hung checkmate. 2 of them were mates in ones. That ought to be something I can work on. In 1 of the games, I missed a free piece that my opponent left for me. In 1 of the games, I resigned when the evaluation said we were even, and I thought I was lost. And in 1 of those games, I timed out. So of that main list, I decided there's some things that I either can or will not be able to fix right now. And that's the 12 games in which I was never ahead, the 12 ones that I'm not sure why I lost, and the one that I timed out on. In that one, I was ahead, and I had a mating sequence. I had a queen and a king. My opponent just had a king. I knew how to checkmate him. I just ran out of time. And in fact, that game I think was on camera. But I think the rest of them I can work on. And that's these things right here. It's a total of 44% of the rapid games that I lost since switching to E4. 20% of those games I hung a piece. 11% were due to endgame tactics. 9% of them I hung checkmate. And then, of course, the 2% each where I missed a free piece or resigned while even. So if I can work on these things in 2024 and fix them, or fix the majority of them, I can eliminate 44% of my losses. Now, of course, that might mean that my rating will go up and I'll face tougher opponents, so then there'll be a new set of things that I can work on, but I think I can work on these right now. The easiest one to fix is the last one, resigning while even. I can fix that by just not resigning, and that's something that's come up several times here at our level, at my level certainly. There's almost never a reason to resign. Sometimes I do it because I'm frustrated, I think I'm lost, there's no point in continuing, it's not fun anymore. And of course, if my opponent has a mating sequence, why not go ahead and let them play it out and give them the satisfaction of checkmating me? So I'm going to stop resigning in my rated rapid games. The next to last one ought to be pretty easy to fix too, especially if I run through the checklist that I use in puzzles. I can probably make a similar version of that for games. When my opponent moves a piece and I'm about to move something, I ought to be able to just look and see, is that piece that they just moved, can I take it? And if so, can they take back? Are there any of their other pieces that I can capture? that one should be relatively easy. And on the other three, I have some examples. I'll just pull them up real quick. This game, which I believe I was playing on camera at the time, I don't like where my queen is, even though it is on a long diagonal. It's kind of not protecting anything there. I kind of want to move it over a little bit, like so, and that will also help protect down in here. Oh, wow. Okay. Did I just get checkmated? I'm about to get checkmated, right? After 26 moves, we were relatively even. The evaluation here, Stockfish says, I had a pretty slight advantage, almost -1. There were a few different moves that I could have played here to maintain that. My best, it says, was F4. If I had played F4, I don't think they would have taken, because I could have taken back, protected by the rook, pointed the bishop at the queen. Another move I could have made is bishop to G7, which would have, I guess, helped defend the king and, defended that square where their queen is pointing at right now. It would have blocked the rook from seeing H7. Another thing I could have done was moved the king over here to G8 or put a rook on G8. That's because their queen wants to come down here and come in this way for checkmate, or this way. I need to defend against those things. I didn't see that. I thought the reason the queen moved back was because I had just challenged it with the bishop. But there was a dual purpose to that move, and one is that it's aiming down here. And I don't have any defense on that square, and I don't have any defense on this square. I didn't see that, and I played queen to B6. But the fact that I did this allows my opponent a forced mate in 4 if they put their queen on H6. And to my opponent's credit, they saw it. But I have to be able to see that before I make my move. I did have a little bit of time here, almost 5 minutes I could have spent, but I was starting to worry about the time differential. My opponent had a lot more time than I did, and that's one reason to play longer games or games with an increment. But still, this late in the game, I probably should have spent a little bit more time and see, can they check me? No, they can't actually check me right now. I mean, this is not a safe check, but can they threaten me? And they can. They can threaten mate right here. And I only had a couple of defenses against that. And when my opponent played it, that was the only thing I could think of. And of course, they take that, and that's checkmate. So this is something that I can work on, running the checklist in my head before I make this move and see, does my opponent have anything? And if I can find that, I still might not be able to find that. But when I do find that, I ought to be able to know, like, I should block that, or I should bring this bishop back to defend, or something. Here's another example from another game. I don't remember if I played this one on camera or not, but I'm ahead here. I have a -1.9 advantage, -1.9 if I play one of those two best moves. Almost -1 if I played my third best move. There's not really a major problem here right now. I'm actually slightly ahead on material. I have 3 pieces. My opponent only has a queen. I'm defending this pawn, which is defending that pawn. This pawn and bishop are defending each other. My rook's pointed at their double pawns. My other rook is blocking those doubled pawns from advancing. But I do have to be careful because of where their queen is. They can check me. But if it was white's turn right now and they checked me, I think I would just be able to block with this rook. Then they might be able to come back out here and check me, and then maybe I could block with the other rook or something like that. I don't know exactly how it would play out, but I know I can't get my king off the back rank, off the side file right now because that pawn's blocking this. So if they checked me here, I would have to block because I can't run. And I made the mistake of taking this pawn. That's what happened with that. Okay. Well, that worked out well for me, didn't it? Or, oh no, it didn't. At the time, I thought it would be a good idea because, it would get rid of one of their doubled pawns, and my rooks would be connected. They would be seeing each other, and they would still be blocking their other passed pawn. The problem with that, of course, is that it hangs mate in 1, because now I can't block this check. And so my opponent found it, so good job for them, because that's mate. That's something that I can work on just by slowing down a little bit. And here again, I had a huge time differential. I was way down on time. I only had 2.5 minutes left. My opponent had 7.5 minutes left. And because of the time differential, even if I had seen that I needed to do something about that and say I had moved my king to one of these squares where, of course, then the king would be defending all 3 of those squares from here, so the queen couldn't come in and check me. If I had done something like that, I still might have lost on time, but I think I would rather be ahead or even and lose on time than just give away a mate in 1. And here's a game to illustrate what I meant by losing on Endgame Tactics, but I misspoke earlier. Of those 45 games that I said were rapid losses, I think a couple of them were draws. This one ended in a draw, but I had an advantage as late as move 31. my opponent has just checked me, and I think it should have been clear to me that, I can't get out of check here, but, I can get out of check, 5 different ways, or I could block. If I move my king out of check to either of those spots on the D file, then their rook has options. Their rook can take my B pawn for free and be threatening my knight, or it could take my F pawn for free and still be threatening the B pawn. And if I move out of check to either of these spots where I'm continuing to protect my F pawn, they can still take this B pawn. And then they're threatening the A pawn. And if I move it forward, they can get behind it. That leaves only one way to get out of check, and that's here. And that's what the engine says that I should have played. I have a pawn majority on the queen side. Here I was up on time. I had twice the amount of time left that my opponent did, and I played king to E3. I don't know how much time I spent on that, but let's find out. I spent 8 seconds on that. Now, of course, there's no sign that pops up in the middle of a game and says, oh, this move is crucial. You can win or lose the game with this move. That doesn't happen, so you don't know sometimes which moves require the most thought. But when you're in check or when you're trying to checkmate your opponent, that should automatically raise a sign in my head that those are more crucial moments because you're in check. And here, like I said, obviously they're forking the king and the pawn and skewering this pawn here. According to Stockfish, the only good move is to block with the rook, and they're not going to take it. Now, some of my opponents probably would. I noticed that the board changed colors. It got a little faded because I'm going into a variation that didn't get played here. But if they take, let's just say that they do, I'm going to take back, right? And now I'm up +1, and that's because of this pawn majority. And with that extra pawn, every piece that comes off the board helps. I should have spent more than 8 seconds on this move. Honestly, I'm surprised I spent 8 seconds and didn't see that I had to block. But that's an example of in-game tactics, especially when I have a time advantage here. But because I played the wrong move, we ended up drawing this game. And here's a game that is a good example of what I meant by hanging a piece. You can see from the eval bar or from Stockfish's suggested moves that I'm up +3 here. I have an extra piece because I have 2 bishops for one of their rooks. And that's where my advantage comes from. I also have an extra pawn or 2, and one of them's a passed pawn that they're having a heck of a time keeping from going anywhere. Look at that. I've got connect 4. All I have to do is get this bishop out of harm's way. I can save the light squared bishop by playing bishop to C2, bishop to D3. Those are the only 2 places I can put it. Now, if I put it on E4, we go back to even. And I think the reason is if I put it on E4, they can just drop their queen in here to F4. And they're still attacking the bishop on E4, and they've lined up against this one with their rook behind it. So that becomes a lot more complicated. But if I put it back here, the queen's protecting it. If I put it back here, nothing's protecting it on C2, but they can't get at it from there. But I thought at this point, I had already lost that bishop. Okay, well, I'm going to lose one of the bishops. If I'm going to lose one of the bishops, it should be fun. Let's go here, and I'll lose that bishop. I don't think there's anything that can be done about that. Yeah, nothing can be done. And so I went here to save this one, not realizing that I could have saved the front one. Here's an example from a game, and again, I'm pretty sure I played this one on camera too. My opponent has just moved this knight here. It's attacking my rook. Now what I thought, or what I saw rather, is that they're attacking this spot right here, F3, which is a fork of my queen and king. Well, I don't like being forked, so I decided to do something about that. What I decided to do about that was move my king to F2. And when I moved my king to F2, of course, the opponent just took my rook. It's free. There's only one move that saves me in this position, and that's rook to G3. And the reason that saves me is because it's the only move that saves the rook and prevents the fork. If I go anywhere else to save it, for example, G4, well, they can still fork my king and queen, right? If I go here, I'm pretty sure their best move is knight to F3 check, and they win my queen. My next best move is knight to E6, which forks their queen and rook. But they get to save their queen and continue attacking my rook. And so if I do the half of my fork that I got to do here, which is take their rook, they don't even have to take my rook now. They can still do this fork. I think here I just didn't see that my rook was under attack. I saw this knight coming forward, asked where's it going. I looked at these spots and said, oh, F3 attacks my queen and my king, so I have to stop that. How much time? I was ahead on time by a full minute here. How much time did I spend on this move? I spent 14 seconds on that move. I must have been asking myself the wrong questions, but again, I'm pretty sure I just didn't see that my rook was under attack. So I have to ask myself, where can the knight go from here and not stop when I see this? I have to look at all the places that it can go from there and realize it can not only fork me, but it can capture my rook. And then I have to ask myself, can I solve both of those problems with one move? And here, of course, I could by moving my rook to g3, which defends f3. But again, I didn't, and I just hung a piece. My opponent saw it, and I'm not down significantly, and my opponent is still down on time. But now I'm losing. I'm down 2 points of material. Now, fortunately, I did see the fork on the other end, which was here. My opponent didn't make the best move, and it is my best move to take their rook, and I did, but I'm down. And during the game, I didn't know that I was actually down here because it looks like we're even on material, but I am down. I suspect one reason is because of all of these pawns are isolated, whereas their pawns, most of them, are connected to friends. But the remaining 4 pawns over here, most of mine are isolated and most of theirs are together. I suspect that's the main reason that I'm down. Also, because of how many pawns there are on the board, their knight is a better piece than my bishop. My bishop can't go anywhere, can it? It has to, come back around and then whoops, it still can't go anywhere. So again, these are the things that I think I can work on and I'm willing to work on this year. I may get around to figuring out some of that other stuff too, but number one, starting at the bottom of this list, I can stop resigning. Just flat out, don't resign. I can take the free pieces that my opponent offers me, especially late in the game. I can hold off on my moves to make sure that my opponent can't checkmate me after I make the move that I want to make. So I won't hang checkmate or a mating sequence. I can spend a little bit more time looking at the intent of endgame tactic moves like that rook move where they threatened my king and a pawn. So I should have blocked with my rook and saved the pawn. And hanging pieces, whether through tactics or just flat out hanging pieces for free and letting the opponent have them, that's something I can just run through a checklist before I make my move. If I move here, what are they going to do next? I think just asking that question before every move, what are they going to play if I move here? And the hope is to eliminate 44% of my losses and or draws. I'm also going to try to work on these things with puzzles, of course, and hopefully you'll stick with me and hopefully you'll get something out of it too, or offer me some help along the way. I do appreciate you spending your time here. I will see you next time.